Alright guys, so today I'm going to be talking about an Alpha Bridge shotgun build. It's taken a while for me to get it to this point where I feel like it's, showcase worthy. I've definitely had this build for a very long time. I've used it with SMGs, but I haven't actually perfected the shotgun variation of it until now. I'm going to get right into it, talk about all the Alpha Bridge pieces, then the rest of my gear, my weapons, my skills, my talents, etc. Starting off with the backpack, this is a 240. Again, this is more of an achievable build. A lot of people don't have all 268s. This build still performs even with 240s in some slots. This is a good 240. It has a decent stamina roll. You definitely want skill power as a major attribute. It's going to decrease your cooldowns. It's going to buff up your heal. It's going to make your pulse stronger if you are going to be playing by yourself or if you're going to be the one using that skill. There's a lot of reasons why it's good to have. You can go with critical hit damage. It does perform, but this is better, and the best in slot is skill power on backpacks for sure. For minor attributes, it doesn't really matter what you go with here. I would recommend getting something like shock resistance because shock turrets are just really annoying in the dark zone, but burn resistance is fine. Anything is really going to fit that slot well. Skill attributes, you want first aid, self-heal on everything you can possibly get it on. However, anything that's going to augment pulse, or if you're going to use smart cover, that works too. You can use that. There's a lot of different things that you can use. These two, for my purposes, are not very useful. Support station range, I don't need, and secret mine explosion radius, I don't need. So I could use some better things there. Now, moving on to what Alpha Bridge actually does, for anyone that has questions about that, the two-piece bonus is just nice to have. It's not really anything critical to PvP. It is nice to have extra medkits, but it's not going to buff your damage at all, unless you're using something like the Tenacious Mask, but that's, a different build entirely. The three-piece bonus helps with health regen, which is really nice if you are sitting in smart cover somewhere, if you get out of the fight, and you do start to regen health, it actually comes in handy. And then the four-piece bonus is what really matters here. Primary and secondary weapon of the same category. That means you have all 6 active talents on the guns. They do have to be activated though. This does not mean that you can put on a secondary that has way too high stat requirements and then activate those talents. You need to activate every single talent, which actually is a key part of Alpha Bridge. So moving on from the backpack, I have my holster. You definitely want armor. There's nothing else you want to roll on a holster other than armor. First aid ally heal is great. It helps me if I'm in a squad, but personally it's not going to help me with survivability. I would prefer first aid self heal. This has a great firearms roll and a great electronics roll. I would prefer a little bit higher on stamina, but this is just a fantastic holster and I'm really happy about it. So then scrolling over to my knee pads, you want critical hit damage, absolutely 100%. Now that's going to buff your damage no matter what gun category you're using, and there's not a better major attribute to roll. Now if you are having trouble maxing out your armor and achieving 75% mitigation, you can roll armor on your knee pads. It's very situational. I would not recommend doing that though. I think the critical hit damage is such a large chunk that you want that for sure. This has a great stamina roll. I am prioritizing stamina in this build, with 3400. I am also prioritizing firearms with 3300. I'm kind of a hybrid of both stats. I'm not a super tank, but I am survivable enough to tank some damage while still, running up and dealing massive amounts of headshot damage with my shotgun. So on here on the minor attributes, I think it's just really valuable for my purposes to throw on some increased kill XP because I'm always dying. That's just kind of a hidden gem on this item in particular. And then for skill attributes, pulse duration, anything that's going to augment your preferred 2 primary skills, you definitely want. Now if that's smart cover for you, that's fine. If you're going to be using something like, I don't know, even mobile cover for whatever reason, you're going to want the skill attributes to augment your 2 primary preferred skills. First aid, self-heal, anything to augment heal is amazing, and then your secondary skill as well will actually get some utility out of it. That's something that doesn't actually fall in line with many gear set pieces though. Oftentimes you're going to have a great piece of gear and then the skill attribute's going to be useless. So when you can get those, it's really nice and really valuable. Moving on to the mask, again, just like the backpack, you're going to roll skill power here. You could roll critical hit chance, but the problem is with skill power, you're going to gain more critical hit chance from like a pulse or something like that, as well as reduce cooldowns, so it doesn't really make it worth it. I would say definitely go for skill power on your mask. It's going to buff up your skill power so that you have a better heal, more of an overheal. There's a variety of reasons why that's definitely the best in slot. For the minor attribute, doesn't really matter. Skill attribute, again, going for something for your primary skills, but I didn't get that here, so it doesn't really matter again. And then moving on to my chest piece. Now I've opted to run the 4 pieces of Alpha Bridge that are not chest piece and gloves, and this is for a very specific reason. And then I'm also opting to not have another 2-piece gear set bonus. I run Reckless. Now you can run Vigorous, and I would actually recommend that people run Vigorous in the current metagame because of how much damage shotguns deal and the bonus damage mitigation from booster shot. However, if I were to switch over to Vigorous, as you can see here, I drop below 2825 firearms. 2,825 firearms, and that means that some of my gun talents are not active. So at this point in time, I cannot run Vigorous the way I want to. I cannot run a Vigorous chest piece. I can't run Booster Shot and still get an overheal. I have to tweak around and get some, some better mods. I don't need much firearms to unlock that. I need less than 100 firearms to unlock, my gun talents on both of my weapons and then use Vigorous. But for now, I'm kind of penned into using Reckless. I just wanted to make sure that people know that you probably should be using Vigorous if given the choice between the two. That's what I would always opt for. Then moving on to the gloves, I have opted for Savage Gloves. I mean, the current metagame, it's no secret, nobody uses cover. Unless someone is glued to their smart cover and it's like an anti-pulse one in their skill build, they're just going to bounce around and be out of cover almost the entire time. So I have Savage Gloves. Again, they're not perfect. 652 stamina. I would prefer much higher. But they do have a good trio. They do not have shotgun damage. So what this actually allows is I have some versatility. I can swap over to some SMGs if I run out of ammo or if I want to just use a different gun type at any point, and that actually will mesh very well with that gun type. However, if I had shotgun damage on these gloves, it would boost the efficiency and let me get more one-shot kills with my current shotgun setup. The actual shotgun damage on the gloves is per pellet, not per shot, which means, 600 shotgun damage actually factors out to much more than like 2,000 or 3,000. It's definitely not just 600. It's actually kind of a big deal. And with already high base damage on the shotguns, with percent weapon damage increases, it becomes even more potent. So it's important to keep an eye out for that if you're going to use a shotgun. I don't have a good skill attribute on those, but what's important is the Savage talent, because most targets are going to be out of cover. So moving on to my weapons, for a long time I was using this military M870. It was a 204, it had deadly, responsive, brutal, which most people consider to be the god roll, and I actually disagree. I think that there's a better way to build your shotgun build. Brutal and deadly are extremely nice, they mesh together extremely well, but I think I've found a better combination. I go with responsive, unforgiving, and competent. And then on my secondary, that's the primary. That's what I would consider to be the god roll. This shotgun will perform by itself in any build extremely well. But also, if you do have the choice of the secondary, you do want brutal, deadly. So on my secondary, I have deadly, brutal, and destructive. Destructive could easily be switched out for something like vicious or fierce, which augment critical hit chance. Whether you're at full health for vicious or not for fierce, that's all the time. That would make this even more potent in PvP in particular. I'm okay with having destructive because the hybrid environment of the Dark Zone means that you're going to be fighting NPCs almost all the time, and having that basically 20% increased net damage overall, considering most of the NPC, health bar is armor, is very good and helps you kill them quickly. The same way you would kill a player, you can almost one-shot most NPCs with the right, headshot when you stack up all those pellets. So it's cool to have destructive, but there are some better things that you could use in terms of strictly PvP performance. All 6 talents, again, just to review: deadly, brutal, destructive, that's on my secondary; responsive, unforgiving, competent. I consider the 3 weapon damage percentage increases to be the god roll: responsive, unforgiving, competent, because when you proc competent as well as responsive, that's already 28% increased damage on top of extremely high base damage on a shotgun. If you have booster shot on top of that, that's another chunk. And then if you proc even one segment of unforgiving, that's another chunk. And these are flat percentage damage bonuses, and those will scale with crit extremely well. You factor in something like smart cover, that's another enormous chunk of damage. So all these things stacked on top of each other allow you to one-shot even someone like a Tanktician with 700,000 toughness. I've done it before. When you snapshot correctly, you can just make mincemeat of any tank build that you feel like whenever you want to. So that's honestly something that I consider to be very fun, because I don't like people running around circles, next to me, sticky bombing me and healing. I don't respect it, so I like to be able to kill them. Moving on to the skills that I run. For solo play, I definitely run Overdose, since I don't have the Vigorous chest piece, but if you do have the Vigorous chest piece, you're going to want to run Booster Shot for sure, and then Pulse with the Tactical Scanner. Now you can run Conceal if you're worried about incoming damage, and if you are in a team setting, you're probably not going to be the one running Pulse because your skill power isn't specifically geared towards having maxed out skills. But from a solo play perspective, this is going to be the setup that you run, and oftentimes in a group setting as well. You can switch over to something like Smart Cover instead of Pulse if you feel like going for, again, percent weapon damage increases over something like Crit, but that's not something I routinely do. And then for a signature, I run Survivor Link. You can also, if you're really into the one-shotting mechanic, you can run Tactical Link. Again, that's another percent weapon damage increase, and all of those things stacked on top of each other allow you to deal well over 1,000,000 effective health damage in one shot when snapshotted correctly. So again, this build is situational, but you can definitely have some fun with it, as you'll see in the gameplay clip that I have coming up. So my talents here, I actually have Chain Reaction on here because I was testing out a build earlier a few minutes ago. But what I'm always going to be running is Strike Back, That's one of the primary things that I use, allowing me to get my heal back faster. I know some people that disagree about the utility of this. However, I will stand by it. I think it's very effective. So anyone that wants to try it out is welcome. I then run critical save. I think that's almost essential in the current meta, because when you get to low health and you proc this with pretty much any form of healing, the damage mitigation will keep you alive through a few of those M870 bursts. And even 1 second extra of life when you're using a shotgun versus a shotgun could mean that you win the trade. Triage is just a broken talent that's too good, so you're going to run that no matter what. If you're playing by yourself, you may not want to, but as soon as you're in a group of even 2 or 3 or 4 especially, you're going to slap that on, guaranteed, and it's going to have a lot of utility. You're going to be able to spam your skills. Nobody likes it when skills are spammed against them, but it's extremely effective when you're trying to stay alive. One is none. Also, I've harped on this a few times in shotgun builds. It procs per pellet. So using a shotgun with one is none is awesome, because you actually, if you land a full headshot, have nearly 100% chance to not consume the bullet in the magazine. Now, a lot of people are going to say that you're not going to land all the pellets at once, or you should be using something like rate of fire weapon damage on your magazine anyways. But I use one is none with actually a magazine size increase so that I can stay dishing damage. My damage over time is so much higher than something that I have to reload constantly. I actually prefer to have this talent coupled with, magazine size weapon damage rather than rate of fire weapon damage. I think it has good results for me. That being said, you can definitely destroy someone with either, so experiment with what you feel to be what you prefer. I'm going to go over to my character sheet really quickly, actually, because people always ask about that. Moving down, my critical hit chance is at 15, critical hit damage is at 111, and headshot damage is at 128. I would prefer, again, these numbers to be much higher. However, these suit the purposes that I need. They work quite well, and in the end, the build performs in PvP. Scrolling down, if you want to pause it and look at any of my individual attributes, you can. Again, I'm capped out. 5413, that's above the 5354 hard armor cap to achieve 75% weapon damage mitigation. You definitely want that in any build that you're going to be running. And then all the way down through, that's all of my attributes. So now I'm going to kick it over to some gameplay and talk through about why it's functioning the way it is, and try and give a better insight into how the build performs. Okay, so here we go. I am with my team. We're actually at this point kind of just farming other players, trying to get some gear for Swamp, just participating in some PvP. And as you can see, I'm going for the headshots to proc one is none, and the high damage of the shotguns. I am abusing the aim assist. That is a mechanism that is available in the game right now, and people may call it cheese. They may say that I'm a noob for using it. I don't really care. I'm not even the best at using it. There are people that can abuse aim assist so much better than I can. I'm actually just barely mediocre at it. But when I do hit those headshots, as you can see, I think it was 17,000 damage per pellet, and with 8 pellets, that's a one-shot kill, and that's outside my optimal range. There's a situation coming up very soon where I just one-tap a few people. There we go. 2 shots, 2 kills. It's very easy to kill other players. If they are not running a tank build, you're going to one-shot them once you snapshotted bonuses correctly. If they are running a tank build, all it takes is a couple extra bonuses. Proc competent, you proc booster shot if you have the vigorous chest piece. You proc, you bounce off smart cover, you have pulse up, you're within 10 meters for responsive, maybe you've lost a health bar for unforgiving, and in the end, all of those things stacked on top of each other mean it does not matter how much health that someone has. Their toughness can be 800,000, they will still drop. If you stack on something like Tactical Link, that's amazing. Any weapon percentage damage increase is just going to make this build perform that much better. Now, I'm not going to advertise this build as some kind of 800,000 DPS build. It's not. You have to snapshot correctly. That's kind of the prerequisite for this build, is being able to time your skills in the proper way. If you do not do that, you're not going to reach the amount of damage required to drop people fast enough, and you'll actually get killed by something like an Alpha SMG or a Deadeye build, because you rely on the fact that you're taking all these things, collecting it into 1 split second, and then firing the shot that hits the head. Now, it takes me a lot of time to get that right, because I oftentimes miss shots. Like I said, I'm not the best at abusing aim assist. Like right there, I keep missing shots. Someone who's better on the sticks could easily land those shots and kill the players quicker. But even then, I do have good results, because when I do snap that headshot, all the mechanisms in the build are working together to give me just massive, there's another one tap, just huge amounts of damage. I think we have a little bit more gameplay here. Some people again have said that you shouldn't be using shotguns, or Sentry Shotgun's so bad. That's why I put this together, and I'm actually going to be using this over Sentry Shotgun in pretty much all of my live streams from here on out. I think that it's something good to do, because I don't know, there's not as many people running Alpha Bridge shotgun, and the ones that do have fantastic builds, I've definitely seen them around. I'm by no means, you know, doing something new or innovative here. I'm just showing you exactly how I've perfected this Alpha Bridge shotgun build. But yeah, I'm trying to step away from the absolute cookie cutter meta builds, even though this is kind of still in that vein. And one of the things about this is you can very easily switch over to 2 SMGs or 2 assault rifles, or even 2 marksman rifles if you have those that you want to use. You can switch over to 2 automatic weapon types like a assault rifle or an SMG. I personally use a PP-19 with an AUG, and I think I have almost the exact same talents as I have on my shotgun, with the addition of hurried, I think, instead of I think it is destructive. So you're still going to have 6 useful talents. Hurried functions like a fire crest, a mini fire crest. When you land enough critical strikes, it actually functions better. So it's very good to use, and the versatility of the Alpha Bridge build is nice. You're going to have to go into your menu. That's another one tap right there, by the way. As you can see, the build performs extremely well. But you're going to have to go into your menus, swap over, just a couple seconds to 2 different weapon types, and you're good to go with SMGs, and that is an extremely competitive SMG build as well. I think that Alpha Bridge is one of the top builds in the current meta when used properly, and I think that it definitely has longevity, and there's so much customization to it that you're free to make it exactly how you want, utilizing the weapon talents, utilizing all the different gear pieces, and it's a really nice addition to the gear sets overall. I've definitely been a fan of Alpha Bridge since pretty much day one. I think it's one of the most innovative and coolest gear sets out there. So that's about it for the gameplay. If you like the build, go ahead and throw a thumbs up, comment. I try to respond to comments, but I've definitely gotten to the point where I can't respond to everything, but I promise you that I try to read everything, and then if I can possibly help with things, or refer you to the Facebook community, something like that, then I also do so. The Facebook community is a great place to match up, to find that squad if you definitely are struggling currently to find a group of people, a dedicated group of squad mates who you're going to synergize with and complete content with. Check out the Facebook page and check out our Discord. There's a lot of good people on there, cross-platform, all 3 platforms. So if you're worried about if there's PS4 players or PC players, don't worry, it's not just Xbox One, there's everyone. Also, if you want to support the channel, please check out the links below. There's never been a better time to do that. It definitely goes towards improving the stream quality overall. It's amazing to have the support that we've had. The community is growing at a really great pace, and it's just fantastic to be here and doing this. So thank you all again, and thank you to anyone watching. As always, guys, have a nice night.